Hello, everybody. Welcome to the early lug for the month of April. Cannot believe we're in April already. That's just bonkers. It seems like yesterday was Christmas. But the leaves are popping out here in Michigan, and it's time for spring apparently. So we are going to do a user group for you. If you would like to join, the link is in the video description. You can also join the chat through Discord or on YouTube here while we stream. So we do have a nice cut topic for you as well as a backup in case we run through the main one too quickly. So the winning topic was, what is Linux missing? Now I don't have a bunch of questions for you guys like I normally do. I just have some categories. So I figured first we'll focus on software because I think that's probably going to be the biggest one. So in terms of software, by raise of hands, who wants to go first? What do you think Linux is actually missing that's not here? Who wants to go first? Gnome, go ahead.
Well, it's been an ongoing thing for years, actually. Accessibility, like screen readers, text to speech, for the hearing impaired or for the blind. There's like not a screen magnifier. None of these are in the toolkit that come with hardly any distribution out of the box.
Well, and the problem is that with each desktop environment, what is there is all different. So
Yeah.
if you switch between them, you have to really figure out, well, it works this way on GNOME, it works that way on KDE, works that way on Cinnamon, and some of them have tools, whatever. Now if you're able enough, you can at least bring some of those tools over to different desktop environments if you need to, but you're right. A lot of stuff's just not there, unfortunately. I think that Windows is better, not because Windows makes it better, but because there's more software available, so you can get third-party stuff. It's weird that hasn't been a focus on Linux, but you'll see. Drew, go ahead.
There's just certain like use cases. For example, I would love to put my wife on Linux for the business that we work for. Can't use Quicken. Can't use QuickBooks, can't use Quicken. There's that old adage that, the Adobe class creative apps are not available to you. Microsoft Office parity. Audio tools sometimes are more challenging. But I think another thing, I don't know if it's still that way, but back when I was during the 90s, Matt, you and I were talking about CAD tools, AutoCAD, IntelliCAD, things like that, not available on anything other than, the big two, basically. So, yeah, there's just a lot of like business oriented, accounting software oriented, some, like I said, Adobe class oriented software that's just not available. And frankly, yeah, you could say, yeah, well, you could use GIMP. No, you can't.
Mm-hmm.
In terms, it's not the same, so.
I mean, theoretically, if you put enough effort into it, a lot of stuff can be done with open source. Like if you combined GIMP and Krita, you probably could get 80% of the way to Photoshop, but it's never going to give you 100%, and the workflow is going to be 100% different. I mean, across the board. It just can't be changed, and there will always be that like one tool, like just a simple one, like GIMP doesn't have a shape tool. I mean, it's 30 years old. It's older than a lot of like people in the Discord server, and it still does not have a shape tool, which is weird. And they say it's on the roadmap, but yeah, in 2042 we'll have a shape tool. I mean, you can't blame them because they're like a really small team or whatever, and not as much funding as Adobe, obviously, but still. It's funny, Drew, when you listed off all the things that aren't here. It really kind of reinforces the stereotype that you can't do real work on Linux. I mean, we all know that's kind of not true for some things. Like if you do like at least some office work, you can do a lot of stuff here. If most of your work is done in Google Docs, you can do stuff here really easily. But if you do things that require professional tools, a lot of that stuff just isn't here.
I didn't even mention a couple of the things like some of the like scanner utilities or RGB controls and things like that. I mean, there's some variance there and stuff like that. But for example, the scanner that we have here for the office, basically, I don't think we could use a Linux like a Linux on it. So there's another thing. Um, you know, in terms of like I said before, CAD. I don't know if people realize how big a deal that is for you know engineers, people in that
Mhm.
civil engineering, things like that in the space. It's just like this is I have to have this. So yeah.
Well, people are going to point towards like, oh, you can use OpenCAD. Mm-mm. It's just not the same. Um, well, I mean, it's one thing though is that like AutoCAD, they tend to sue out their competition a lot. Like if even if there were a
Yeah.
suitable competitor, they'd almost certainly get sued out of existence just because that's just the way the AutoCAD and I guess it's Autodesk now,
Yeah.
has been for I mean forever. So and like 3D printing, like you need all that. I mean, there are some really good 3D printing tools that are like browser based that you could use, but if you need something that's more beefy, chances are that's going to be a Windows only or a Mac only thing, and that takes out even a lot of enthusiasts who have like 3D printers. They can't use. Um, but by the way, we should tell for people who are watching this, we're not trying to badmouth Linux. I think we're all
No.
suitably Linux nerds here. I mean, so, but we're also realists. So, um, anybody else have software that they'd like to share that isn't here, or perhaps is here and just isn't as good as it is on other platforms? Um, another one that I find fascinating that's kind of not here. Oh, actually, I completely forgot. Flew right out of my mind. Drew, save me.
I was going to ask the question because I don't know the answer to, but if you're anybody here is a gamer, isn't the anti-cheat stuff, d- doesn't that like play into this kind of like issue as well? Linux against Windows type thing. I don't know the answer. It seems in my head that that is an issue.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it depends on the game, really the developer. Some EAC works, but games like Fortnite or Valorant, especially, the developer just doesn't want them on the platform. A lot of some Epic games, it really just depends on the developer and the game, even for that matter, if it works on Steam or not. Really, your best bet's just to check the Proton DB, and if it has anti-cheat, check Proton DB. Otherwise, just play it. It usually works.
What do you guys? I mean, just while we're on the subject of gaming, do you guys think that there's legitimate? Because a lot of the developers say that they could support Linux in terms of actually making things work, and obviously Steam has made the process of using some anti-cheats work fine on Linux. But the whole idea is that I don't remember who it was. Maybe it was the Destiny guys, or maybe it was Epic. They said that when they supported Linux, 90% of their support tickets came from people who use Linux when their user base was only, just a very small percentage of the actual game players. Um, I mean, I wonder if that's because there was a lot more problems on Linux, or because as we're much more likely to report bugs than Windows users are. Maybe it's a mixture of both. You know what I mean? We're so used to every time we run into something that's wrong with Qtile or whatever, hopping off over to GitHub and posting an issue that we just report that kind of stuff more often than what they are. So you're right, Drew. Gaming is definitely a big one. The one thing that I was actually thinking of is like artist tools. So things like Wacom tablets and stuff like that, and anything from like Elgato that you would like to use on Linux. None of that software is actually here. Now we are a resourceful bunch in that we have some open source tools that kind of make some of that stuff work. So like I have a Stream Deck here. you can use something that there are several tools that you can use to get that to work on Linux, but the official software is not here, probably never will be here. Wacom tablets or basically any of the there's like one that starts with an H, like Huey or something like that. I'm not an artist, so I can't remember the name. But all their stuff, all Windows only. It's just the way that it is. So that's I guess that's more hardware related, but still it's because of the software support. Why would the artist tool support Linux when Photoshop and stuff isn't here? I mean, it's kind of pointless. Drew, go ahead.
I mean, you can't. It was funny because you've had trouble with. I can't even remember the name of the software that Nate uses to edit the podcast.
Resolve.
You know, it's hard for you to get it to work on Linux for whatever reason. It just seems like that's kind of very distro specific. But as far as going back to games for a minute, I remember my son when he was much younger, wanting to play Roblox. And I don't know how big Roblox is for the younger kids today, you know, but I know that they're $1 billion company. And the fact that they used to have workarounds for Linux, but it's never been like really, really good. It would be really cool if there was something that the Linux community could do so that the younger kids that want to play something like Roblox on a web would be like could make that, you know, could defeat that objection, you know.
Yeah.
Does anybody know anything? I don't know anything about Roblox, but yeah.
No, I don't.
Although that it is written for, you know, like some scripting is in Lua, which is an interesting interesting side note.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it either. I honestly don't think I've ever seen any gameplay from it whatsoever. So I've heard the word before, and I obviously game more than you do, and I still don't know what it is. Steve, go ahead.
Hello, guys. Sorry I'm late. So what is Linux missing? That's the subject.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Good biometric tools like fingerprint tools, Windows Hello, face unlock tools. There's no good ones out there. There are a few, but they're either no longer supported or outdated. So that's a security, basically related to security. So that's why I created my own, but still jank, because we need to find workarounds. There's no actual solid support for biometric tools.
Yeah, it's definitely a big one. I know that, like, and the biggest, I mean, not the biggest problem, but at least one of the problems and the hurdles that go along with it is that every laptop is going to be using a different piece of hardware to do that, and which means you have to support them all, and it can kind of get messy, right? Honestly, it is weird given that we have major corporations that supposedly are hardware certified, like Ubuntu and OpenSUSE and obviously Red Hat. Those things are meant to be put on actual hardware. It's weird that one of the big companies haven't tackled the authentication biometrics thing. Even if it was just for like, oh, well, we'll support Lenovo, you know, maybe we won't support Dell, but we'll support Lenovo. It seems like they would have done that. It also seems like, because in order to have your operating system certified for some government agencies and even some companies, you have to have these certifications, right? It seems like some of those certifications would, you know, kind of require actually biometric support in the operating system. It also feels like that's something that's really lacking in the kernel, right? It feels like that really should be something that the kernel tackles, and just for whatever reason they haven't. Maybe it's because there's so many different types of it. Maybe it's because it's just not a popular feature. I don't know, but it's definitely an issue there. So let's talk a little bit more, because we just kind of hopped into hardware. What hardware things are missing when it comes to Linux support? I know Drew mentioned scanners, but I mean, I'm just going to steal the big one away and say printers. But now, granted, I can't tell you the last time I tried to print something on Linux or on any operating system. I just don't do it. GNU Linux was making fun of me earlier for doing everything on my phone, but I also don't print anything. So I really am Gen Z apparently when it comes to that stuff. But I know a lot of people still had to print stuff. So printers is a big one. Control Linux, go ahead.
Yeah, printers, you just got to buy the right printer on Linux. I've told everybody that Brother is one of the best brands. I've got a Brother printer. When I did not have to install any drivers. I didn't have to do anything. Linux Mint recognized it instantly, and it prints over the network. It's not even wired, so you can put it anywhere in your house. They make several printers, but yeah, I've told several people to buy the same model I have because it's amazing. It was even recognized for my machine that runs FreeBSD and my cell phone. Everything just recognizes it. So yeah, printers should not be an obstacle. That's a weak complaint. Maybe if you have a printer and you're trying to make it work and it doesn't work, I can understand your frustration. But yeah, if you're buying something new, and printers are cheaper than ever nowadays, it's easy.
Our brother printer is more expensive than their competitors?
No, not really. I paid like $79. It's a black and white laser, and it's nice.
See, every once in a while I'll see printers advertised, and because I'm a nerd, I mean, I as a super nerd, I can even get excited about printers, which is, pathetic. But like Shack advertises those Epson printers that you can actually fill with like bottled ink, like those. Like, where was that when I actually needed a printer? Because like when I needed a printer, I had these stupid inkjet things that were always dry when I needed them. So those always look cool. I don't know if those would work on Linux or not, but I assume other corporations have something similar. I have this somewhere around here. I have a no ink printer. I haven't even tried to get that attached to a computer because it's an app based thing. So, who's next? Kelvin, go ahead.
With the Brother printer, I have one, and I'm using a couple of distros, Arch based and Kubuntu. There was at some point a big problem. I don't remember if it worked right off the bat. It's been a while, but it's had issues where I don't know. I don't think it was even an update, but I've got it better working without any fuss on Arch-based distros where I didn't have to do a thing. Although there's some kind of quirks where you have to kind of retry, like there's some error, and I've looked deep into it. Like, it was actually an issue I couldn't even solve, even with all the tutorial and AI stuff. There's something that just didn't click. But in terms of, I believe on my Kubuntu, it doesn't work. And I can't figure that out. I haven't tried it recently to revisit. But also I also second the laser thing. Like, it's been the best type. Like, I haven't had to replace anything for years. And it's just black and white, no fuss. The other thing I was going to actually mention, though, I think this is more the Brother problem, is the sleep mode really messes things up. Now, it hasn't happened for a bit, but that would cause an issue where somehow I couldn't wake it up no matter what I did. And that might be part of the issues I'm having in general.
Gnome, go ahead.
Yeah, I've heard Brother printers are good. I haven't actually tried one, but they are supposedly plug and play, or allegedly. I made the mistake years ago of buying a Canon, and it's a printer, scanner, copier, all-in-one deal. It's a MG Mike Golf 2900 2900, and you would think you could look for like 2900 or 29 series for the driver for this thing for the cups or C Unix print. No, that does not exist. It's like CJI2. Who thought this up? Like, it's sometimes it can be a little difficult to track down the right driver for your specific printer, and that I can definitely sense the frustration because I've walked down that path.
It would be nice if things were, I mean, because a lot of the drivers do exist, but if you have a computer or a printer that actually needs the driver, at least from what I've been told, you kind of on your own going searching for it. Whereas like with Windows, you plug that thing in and it just finds it, right? I think Mac does the same, and maybe Linux does now too. Because you got to remember, I haven't tried in years. The last time I had one was I think it was like Epson something or the other. I don't know. I used it exactly one time to print off some tax forms and then packed it away. It's somewhere around here. But I remember trying to get that connected over Wi-Fi was kind of a pain. But again, that was years ago. Gary, go ahead. Do you keep getting kicked off for some reason? Some internet problems or something? You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask that too. Yeah, I keep getting booted out. So if nobody else, I get freezing, and then sometimes I get dropped out. So if nobody else is having any freezing after this comment, I'm going to restart my machine, so I'll disappear for a while.
Okay.
On the printer thing, I just wanted to make a comment about the other, Brother and some of the other brands are not really, they're all kind of comparable price-wise. Traditionally at work, we always used HP printers, and in an enterprise environment, they are a freaking nightmare sometimes on a print server. But anyway, also another thing that HP does, my downer on HP, is because HP they seem to charge a premium for their toner compared to Brother and other brands. So remanufactured toner for HPs is a big deal, and some of the remanufactured toners are really very good. But in their later models now, even the little ones, if your machine is connected to the internet, even in an enterprise environment, it will go talk to HP and they will upgrade the firmware on you, and they change the firmware so that if you have a remanufactured toner and the chip doesn't say what they want it to, it won't print. It'll reject your cartridge.
Yeah, DRM,
so that's
right?
just a comment on there's ways to get around it, but it's always a lot of screwing around and horsing around. So I'm not an HP fan anymore, but I haven't really, and I don't do inkjet because they always dry up on me because I rarely print. So I hear you, Matt, on that one.
Yeah, it's really frustrating when you do need a print. Like if you're a rare printer, that stuff's always dried up, and the laser stuff seems like it's more expensive. So I just don't print. I print once every 10 years, maybe. It's just crazy. like I just don't. I don't. If I can't email it, you're probably not gonna get it from me. I mean, this is just the way that it is. GNU to Linux. Go ahead.
I thought I would share the name of the print just in case this thing is miraculous. I'm not getting a commission, but it's Brother HL-L2405W. It's not a very sensible name, but
that is a Sony username or product I've ever seen one.
Yeah, it's a weird. They should give it a name. Who knows how many? I don't know how many models they have, but yeah, this thing is recognized by Android, Linux, FreeBSD instantly. No drivers. It's a miracle. So
I wonder if you're positive. So you said it was recognized by BSD, but have you tried other Linux distros? I mean, you're a Mint guy, so I mean, have you tried it on other distros?
Not really. I haven't, but I can't imagine it would be that difficult.
Because I noticed with some other things, I mean, not necessarily printers, but they do tend to have different experiences with being usable depending on what desktop environment you're using. Because Cinnamon and whatever probably has really good support for that kind of stuff. Whereas if you're using like a window manager, I mean, obviously you're much more of a nerd, but getting stuff working on a window manager is always harder. And I also know that the KDE stuff is a mess sometimes for a lot of people. So I wonder how those experiences translate between different desktop environments, different distros and stuff like that. So it'd be interesting to know that. Drew, go ahead.
It was actually a reminder or a question, Matt, to you about, I remember you having difficulty with like monitors going to sleep. And I don't know if you attributed that to like a hardware issue or not. And the other thing that we mentioned, I don't know, a couple weeks ago thereabouts on the pod was the difficulty with Bluetooth.
Mm.
And so those are the couple other things. It's kind of hit and miss when you're looking at Bluetooth, at least as my experience is. But then again, I don't really use Bluetooth, even though, there's a question of like, okay, do I use this? I use this mouse. It has Bluetooth. I choose to use the,
Little
the
dongle
the
thing.
gigahertz thing or whatever it's called,
Yeah.
So, but your monitor was something that I don't know if, like you said, that you attributed it to a hardware issue, and then, like I said, Bluetooth.
Yeah, so I still don't know what the monitor thing is. So it's really weird. So on Wayland, when I'm on like Hyperland or KDE or GNOME, it will, if I set the computer to go to sleep, it works fine. It will not stay on and just turn the monitors off. It just pops on, pops off. It's almost like you have wake on network enabled, but I don't. So it just kind of wakes the monitors whenever it feels things. I thought maybe like maybe my house like constantly shakes or something, so it's moving the mouse. But that's on Wayland. On the funny thing is on Xorg, like I'm on Qtel now, it works fine. The computer stays on all the time. Monitors just turn off. I have had problems in the past where Vivaldi will actually be the culprit keeping things on when it's not supposed to. Because Vivaldi is weird. It has a daemon that runs in the background, and you really got to be careful about that. Running and kind of keeping things open, because it does it to speed things up and relaunching the browser and stuff like that. And especially if you have like a lot of YouTube tabs open, it'll actually keep some of those things open, even if you've have closed the main instance of the browser. So that's that. At one point, I found that was the problem, keeping the monitors from sleeping. Also, I will say that my hardware is just weird. It doesn't treat KDE very good. Everybody else seems to have an okay experience with it. Mine is atrocious. So maybe I just have some funky Chinese memory or something that has problems. Steve, go ahead.
Yeah. To add to your monitor issue, I have the same issue with my mini PC. I don't know why. My mini PC is connected to a small dinky little Samsung monitor, and that monitor goes to sleep, then wakes up again and never goes back to sleep again. And I don't have Vivaldi open or anything. I just have Terminal open. So I don't know what's wrong with that. And as far as missing hardware goes, well, I don't know if you like what's it called, Elgato Stream Deck, proper Elgato Stream Deck support. We have a lot of janky tools that support it, but I don't know if it's hardware or software. And another piece of software that nobody mentioned is proper iPhone support to synchronize music to your iPhone for iPhone owners out there. We don't have that on Linux. We can only use it as a webcam or storage device as like a USB. But we don't have proper iTunes style support for iTunes. So I just thought I'd mention those.
Yeah, the iPhone thing is Apple, right? I mean, that's kind of what where you gotta, like, Apple's not gonna do that. It's weird that someone hasn't kind of put together a hacky solution for it. Maybe they have, but yeah. I will say, when it comes to hardware, peripherals are a big deal. I mean, we know I just mentioned printers, but when it comes to like mouse support, like any of the Logitech stuff, this I can't really hold it up. Well, maybe I can hold it up. This is the see if I can get it in frame. This is the Elecom Huge Pro, I think is what they call it. Maybe Plus. Maybe it's the Elecom Huge Plus. It's significantly more expensive than the regular Elecom. I love this thing. It's amazing. It's so much better than the other one. It has a detachable cord. It has better bearings in it, so that you don't have to replace the bearings to make it smoother. It's really, really good. There's no software support for it whatsoever on Linux. And yeah, you can use something like Input Remapper in order to remap the keys, but it's not persistent all the time. It loses what's stored all the time. So what I did is I plugged it into my Mac and programmed all the buttons over there. The Dactyl that I have will support Vile, and Vile will work on Linux. Unfortunately, in order to get to work, you have to mess around with UDEV rules, which is just, I mean, point a regular normal person towards a UDEV rule, and they'll just probably want to run away from it. So getting, especially hardware that requires customization, usually the software lets it down, or Linux has some weird things. Another thing that is really bad on Linux when it comes to hardware are game controllers. Getting these things working is a pain in the ass. Now, part of it is that they all use some kind of different janky connection protocol than what they should have, instead of just straight up Bluetooth. Some of them won't connect because of just, like, I have a Sony, a PlayStation wireless controller that I bought specifically to use with Linux. In order to get to even enter pair mode, to connect to Linux, you have to basically know the secret handshake in order to do it. You have to press, 3 different buttons all at the same time. None of them are together. It's just a pain in the ass. And then when you do, Steam is like the thing that's kind of in control of getting those things connected after you finally get it connected via Bluetooth, and sometimes it just doesn't work. It's just a pain in the ass. That's why when I wanted to play with a controller on Linux, I just bought one that I could plug in, which seems to work way better than attaching it wirelessly. So that's another thing that's definitely wrong. I will say that I have had some, I mean, I don't want us to be complete 100% negative on this, because we're just giving Linux a bad name, but I bought this, I definitely can't pull this up, but I have a dedicated like little volume knob, which is just like a random thing that I bought on Amazon. That worked really well, like out of the box. I just had to know what signal it was pushing out, and then grab those little, probably, Unicode things and put them into my config file. It worked fine. So very hit or miss when it comes to the attachments for Linux. Anybody have any like horror stories of things that they've bought, absolutely positive that it was going to work fine, and then you plug it into your Linux box and you could never get it to actually work? Steve?
My baby, my G15 keyboard did not work. No drivers, no nothing for it. It worked as a normal keyboard, but the thing I bought it for back in the day, the G keys, as they're called, the macro keys, did not work. And I checked with all over the place. I was expecting it to be plug and play, because they're just keys, like any macro manager app should support it, but no. And the LCD screen on it, I'm a sucker for widgets, even on hardware. Did not work. I was so sad, and I cried and sat in my corner, hugging my keyboard, saying sorry. Didn't mean to use you on Linux, but all of a sudden, someone came out on the AUR and contacted me, and then he decided to host versions or ports of the Windows drivers to Linux, but they were jank, so he discontinued them after a month. So, but yeah, I'm really sad. I just use it as a regular keyboard. I don't have access to my 32 times 3 macro keys. So I'm so sad.
Yeah. Anybody else have horror stories of things that they've bought that they couldn't get running on Linux, or have you all just had the angel's luck when it comes to connecting things? I think for me, when I first got the Stream Deck, it was hard because there weren't as many tools. There was a really janky one where you had to kind of do it all via an XML file, which is just the horror story of all things, because I can't stand XML with a passion. But that's gotten way better. Like, Stream Controller is just a good piece of software. It works really, really well. But I think in recent years, like even like this MX Master, I think this is the third one. This here, if you wanted to do any of the customization stuff on it, it just wouldn't work. But now there's tools that you could do that with. So it has gotten better in recent years. So let's move on to something else then. When it comes to support, so this is more of a Linux community kind of thing. We can kind of have a bitch fest if we want. When it comes to Linux support, now personally, I feel like Linux does support better than Microsoft or Apple, but it's all community based, obviously. But so, do you guys think, just by a raise of hands, who wants to go first, that there are places in support land that could use some work that Linux is kind of missing support on? Steve?
Being a distro maintainer, you should have expected me to be the first, because I do provide support. I am the support for Zero Linux. But yes, support is lacking. Good support is lacking on Linux, and that's this is inherent of the existence of so many different distros, and so many different desktop environments. And basically, to sum it up, a lot of tools that do the same thing, just differently, that have the same outcome but just differently. So when it comes to support, the unfortunate reality is that everybody is opinionated. When it comes to Linux support, it's all opinionated communities, full of opinionated people who force their opinions on others. There's no respect. There's a lack of respect to the user. Instead of respecting the user's preferences, we try to impose our own preferences on the user. It's unfortunate. This is a big, huge thing missing on Linux. It's proper support channels where nobody is judged, nobody is talked down to. I can talk for myself because I provide support for my users. I try my best not to be judgmental, but I do catch myself sometimes trying to force a couple of small opinions here and there, not major ones like elitist type of communities. But I was caught by many users telling me that I was a bit too forceful sometimes. So I try my best not to be. But yeah, this is something huge when it comes to Linux, and I don't think there will ever be, because we are human.
Can you do Linux? Go ahead.
Yeah, for support, it really helps to use a distro that has a forum and is known for being supportive. And I solved an issue I was vexed by just yesterday by posting on the Linux Mint forum, which is very active. And that's one of the benefits of using Mint. If you're using a more obscure distro, you may have trouble getting that help from the community. Although if it's based on a bigger distro, you may be able to go to that support forum, for the bigger distro that your small distro is based on, and start there. So it definitely helps to have multiple places to go, and also to help yourself by knowing how to use a search engine, looking in the right places. I've solved a surprising number of issues, really picky, things that irked me that I wanted to solve through Reddit, super user, just knowing how to put the right words in the search and figuring stuff out on your own with help from what you find online.
So you mentioned it's good to have multiple places to go. I mostly agree with that, but also it can be super confusing to know where to go. Like if you're having problems with your desktop environment and you're using Linux Mint, and Mint is a bad. Let's say you're using the XFCE version of Linux Mint, and you're having problems with XFCE. But are you having problems with Linux Mint? Do you go to the XFCE forums? Wait, are there XFCE forums? I'm assuming that there are. Or do you go to the Linux Mint forums? And I think one of the things we've talked about kind of support in a previous LUG before, but I think one of the things that is missing, kind of what Steve was saying, is the ability for and this is really prevalent in a lot of forums. They're very attached to the things that they're supporting, which is obvious, right? If you're supporting Linux Mint and someone comes in and asks an Arch Linux question, obviously they're going to have a problem with that. But unless less obvious conflicts, I think that sometimes the forum users tend to be very, not our problem, go ask somewhere else. And when you are someone who's trying to figure something out, especially if you're new to that thing, and you go to, I'm just going to beat up on Linux Mint because you mentioned Linux Mint. You go to Linux Mint and you ask a question about XFCE, and they say, well, that's an XFCE problem. I can't help you. You know, go to the XFCE forums. Just as hypothetically, maybe they'd help you find it. I don't know. That can be very disheartening because then you have to go to another stop. And if you go to XFC and you ask your question there, and it turns out that it's a dbus problem or a system D problem, sorry, can't help you. You have to go somewhere else for another. So you're just basically being, it's similar to calling the cable company when the first person you talk to doesn't know what the hell they're doing. So they have to transfer you up the line to another person. They don't know what they're doing. And eventually you get to a supervisor and you realize they'll reluctantly send a technician out, and then they'll charge you money when you realize that, it was a broken cable or something, so I think it's one of the things that Linux could use better would be better forum managers who realize that sometimes providing support for things that aren't necessarily your realm of influence is an okay thing to do. I mean, not without reason, but if it's still something that's kind of tangentially related to the thing that you're supposed to be supporting, I think that it's, showing some empathy there would probably be a good thing. And that's sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't.
I would like to retort to what you just said. Yeah, I mean, because your example was so spot on to what I was talking about. Because I went to the Linux Mint forum, and there are sub forums, and I went to the Cinnamon forum because the problem I was having was pretty specific, obviously, to Cinnamon. Because the issue I had was that I was launching a GUI app through the terminal, and it had a generic gear icon on the panel and on the task switcher when you hit Alt Tab. And that annoyed me. I wanted to have the icon. I couldn't figure out why this particular app, the only one, didn't show the icon, So it was something that wasn't obvious because all my other apps, no matter how I launched them, whether they're app images or from the package manager or they're from a script that launches some GUI app, they all worked. But sure enough, because I asked the question in the right place and the forum is helpful, somebody told me, hey, this is a known issue. And it told me this really very specific way that I never would have figured out in a million years how to fix it. Now I know how to do it if it ever happens again. But to answer your question, I think number one, you have to know where to ask the question, right? Cinnamon's one of the official desktop environments on Mint. You know that the Mint forum's active, so you post it there first. If you're on XFCE, like you said, there's an XFCE subforum, and you would ask your question there. If for some reason days or a week went by and they couldn't help you, all right, at that point, now you've stumped everybody. Now, okay, you have to go elsewhere to ask XFCE experts elsewhere in other forums that might know how to fix your problem, even though it has nothing to do with your individual distro. So yeah, knowing where to ask the question and how to ask it, where people want to help you is half the battle. So
yeah, well, I mean, part of the problem with having so many distros, so many desktop environments is there's just so many different places to ask, and there's so many things that could go wrong. We as Linux nerds kind of have a good idea of where to start, but if you're like brand new to Linux, like you buy yourself a Steam Deck and it was great, so you decided to install Linux on your PC, chances are you're not going to know where to start. I think that's the reason why most people assume that the distro is where you go for your support, even though there's a lot of stuff that says on top of the distro that they may not necessarily desire to maintain or provide support for. I think that especially the big distros like Mint, Debian, Ubuntu, Arch, especially Arch, could could see themselves providing us a little bit more empathy towards things that sit on top of their distro in order to provide support for. Some of them, again, some of them are great. The Arch forums are a heinous place to exist. Sorry, Arch guys, it's just true. Drew, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna like paraphrase here to say Linux support is fragmented because Linux itself is fragmented.
Truth.
You know, there's no single help desk. There's only distro forums and project wikis and GitHub issues and Reddit threads and but the support and here's the thing, the support on Linux is great if you're an expert. You know what I mean? If you're an expert, it's awesome. If you are not, it's uneven at best. You know, that is the problem that we have had for years and years. There's plenty of support, but not just one unified support system. And that in itself is problematic for many people, you know, or they just end up like suffering. You know, the people just will suffer and just go, fuck this, I'm done.
I'm going back to Windows.
Yeah.
So just to kind of bring it back to the topic just a little bit on this, the thing that we're missing is someone to call. You know what I mean? Like if you...
Who are you going to call, Matt?
I mean, Ghostbusters. But so I just bought my mom a new computer. I mean, she's been a Dell enjoyer for many, many years. I have my own thoughts on Dell, but we've had... like I said, probably for 20 years we've been buying Dell computers, and we buy the extended warranties, and because the reason why we keep going back is because they have phenomenal service. They don't necessarily make the best computers. I personally think that nobody makes great laptops anymore. It's just kind of hit or miss depending on which model you get, and you know, hinges are horrible all over the place, but whatever. But we will keep going back to Dell because they just have the best service. I can call them or get on WhatsApp or whatever, and they'll walk me through. And when they figure out what's wrong with it, I can either ship the thing to them, and oftentimes they'll come to my house to fix it. But they'll only do that for Windows. You know, if your computer has Linux on it, they're going to blame Linux immediately. I experienced that with this HP laptop that I bought. I put Linux on it and then had problems with it, and I had to call the HP support guys, and once they realized that it has Linux on it, they were done with it. They just had no interest in supporting it whatsoever anymore. I mean, that's just because more like for hardware stuff, but if you're... The thing is, like, if you're like a brand new to Linux user and you're more used to the way support works on Apple or on Windows-based computers, you're used to being able to either get on a chat line or call someone with a 800 number. And none of that kind of stuff really exists on Linux. I think that's one of the reasons why I found pointing people towards like ChatGPT and Claude, because that feels... this is going to piss off the AI guys, but that feels more like interacting with an actual human than getting on a forum and waiting for someone to actually do something, where that's all text-based. Where with ChatGPT, you can actually talk to the AI voice if you want to. And it kind of it makes it seem like now they're going to lead you astray in all the problems with AI. But I think that for technical support, that has kind of been a game changer. So, I don't know. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to make sure before I open my mouth. This is like a B-fest, right? Like complaining and whatnot.
Sure.
Okay. Well, I've got a kind of a flip side of the coin there for Steve, what he said earlier about support. And he may or may not agree with me. And I guess you can't really say this publicly because being a distro maintainer and he offers support. I used to do a lot of support for different Linux topics and whatnot. And everything in life is opinionated. You look at any article, a wiki has the opinion of that dev team or that support staff. Everything in life is opinionated. You can't be forceful, quote unquote, forceful on the internet. It's the internet, children. Put your big boy pants on. It's just an opinion. So yeah, that's excluding the snide remarks, obviously. Those don't need to be in any support, but that's just my opinion. And yes, I would agree with everyone. You have to ask in the right place to get the right, and ask the question the correct way. Like, like Linux Mint or Ubuntu, they have the back end they use, so it's pretty easy to get support for something like that. Whereas if you're talking like an Arch system and they give you options, including your init system, it's a little bit, you have to ask a much more elaborate question to get the proper support, because otherwise they're going to come back with, well, how'd you do this? How'd you do that? Like, yeah, they're going to tear you down because you didn't ask the right question. So that doesn't need to happen in the support community either. I agree with that. But yeah, I think support does have opinions, so deal with it. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think that the biggest problem with people who provide support is that they do have a tendency to forget that most people are noobs of one varying level or another. And like I think Drew said, if you're an expert, getting support is excellent because there are other experts to help you. And when you talk to someone on a forum somewhere and they really know their stuff, a lot of times they also assume that you know something. And I disparage noobs all the time because it feels like I disparage noobs, but it's just the truth. Noobs they don't know anything. They're noobs. You can't expect them to know how to ask the question or to work through troubleshooting stuff. They have to know how to do the troubleshooting stuff. Now, maybe I'm not giving them enough credit. It's always possible, but it does feel like we have a tendency to not allow ourselves to remember what it's like to be new at something and not know what the hell we're doing. None of us here were always knew the things that we know now. You know what I mean? Like GNU to Linux, you fixed your icon problem. You didn't know how to do that, before yesterday, and you learn every step that we've learned, every step we've taken on Linux as a whole, as a community, we've all learned along the way. And we sometimes, I think, forget that other people are still at the beginning part of that journey. And you can't treat those guys the same way you treat someone who's been using Linux since the 90s. You can't. And if you do, you're going to come across as an asshole. It's just the way that it is. I mean, the RTFM thing is a whole nother issue. We've talked about that before. But there's levels below that of being supported in such a way that comes across as unhelpful because you're making too many assumptions of the knowledge that other people actually have, and that's a big deal. I mean, that's why I keep coming back. You have to have empathy for people who aren't at the same skill level as you are. Maybe eventually they'll get there, but they're not going to be able to get there without you showing some empathy. Steve, go ahead.
I agree with both of you, with GNOME and you, Matt. But what I meant by opinionated was when you tell people I'm using KDE, I need help. They come at you. Hey, you're using the wrong desktop environment. You're an idiot. You should use so and so because that's better than KDE. KDE is a piece of crap. That's what I'm talking about. Opinionated replies, and I agree with you, Matt, that we tend to forget that we're talking to total noobs. We sometimes come at them from a point of view where we expect them to know a lot of things. I do that a lot. I catch myself doing that a heck of a lot of times. And the type of jobs I'm looking for is technical support right now. And my dad just, walked on me trying to help someone, and I was frustrated and almost borderline yelling at them when they were noobs. And I yell at him, expecting him to know stuff to take care of his computer when he asked me to help him. So that's 100% correct. We fall into those categories, but support. When I said it's lacking, there's a lot of like if you go to the Arch forums, you're using Arch, vanilla Arch with KDE, whatever desktop environment or window manager. You go to the Arch forums. you're not going to be helped a lot. You're going to be talked down to continuously, nonstop. So some product forums are less friendly than others, less friendly and welcoming than others. And if a project, a Linux project, only has a Reddit or a subreddit, you would know that it's not a great product, because subreddit, it's the most unwelcoming place if I've seen one. But yeah, it's a Linux weak point when it comes to support. It's the availability of proper support channels. There are a few projects like Mint, like GNU to Linux said, like Mint, they have proper support. They don't judge people. They don't talk down to people. But there's not a lot of them. Not all projects have them. And when you said something about us distro maintainers not wanting to support anything, the underlying thing, but only the stuff that, like me, I only provide support for the changes I did to Arch Linux. I don't provide support for Arch Linux itself, because for that, I do tend to tell people to RTFM, because I find that the Arch repository, Arch Wiki, the Arch Wiki is a beautiful place to go, because it applies to not only Arch but a lot of other distros. So I tend to tell them to go read the documentation. But when it comes to changes that I've done to Linux, I do provide support to those. And what I hate about the support community, when a user comes to you and he asks for support, they don't accept that there are things that you don't know. Even as a distro maintainer, as a project maintainer, you don't have all the answers. They become angry, and they start bitching and moaning, and because a project maintainer did not have the answers they expected. There's also that. There's an aspect of the user asking for support that also causes problems in a support community. So there's both aspects. But yeah, sorry, that was long, but it's a topic near and dear to my heart.
Yeah. Drew, go ahead.
Where Linux is awesome is freedom. I don't know, Matt, the caw and the, we
I need a soundboard, man.
I know we need a soundboard. It's just like freedom. And then, okay. Anyway, it's not, and in that strength is some issues as well, because it's not one desktop product. It's not one distribution. It's not one package manager. It's not one desktop environment or init system or display servers or anything. Then there is the issue, right? It's this fragmentation that we have, which is also our strength. And so, when someone goes online and they're looking for an answer, a tutorial might say, open your settings, go to startup applications, enable fractional scaling, right click the task manager. But if you're on GNOME or KDE or XFCE, those things might be completely different. And that in itself is troublesome when it's not consistent across the board. And so you have to play this kind of like, you have to become much more, you have to be much more patient with, and knowing all that, we have to be much more patient, I guess is my plea to people who are providing support. And I feel for you, Steve, in the sense that if you are trying your best to support something that you feel is, very near and dear to your heart, and then you're getting like backlash off of that, that's tough. I mean, my one suggestion would be just, don't do it.
he says as he's become a distro maintainer himself.
That's why I don't do it.
Drew's like, there will be no support.
There will be no support.
That's funny. All right. So we mentioned documentation and the RTFM stuff, just briefly. I think specifically the Arch guys are really prone to this because the Arch Wiki is so good if you're a supporter of Arch Linux and you do all your support for Arch Linux, and then you go try to support something else, you have a tendency to point people towards the documentation. But the Arch Wiki is it's not the bar that we should set for all the documentation, because in comparison, all the other documentation on Linux is shit. It's just bad. Like, I'm going to pick on NixOS. NixOS's documentation is atrocious. It is by far the worst thing about NixOS is that you can't, there's 12 different wikis. That's an exaggeration, but that's what it feels like. And they all do things in a different way. None of them are actually complete. I'm not convinced that the developers of NixOS actually know what they're doing half the time. Maybe they have internal documentation that we just don't know about it, but I doubt it. And if they did, it's probably not finished as well. So the Arch Wiki has set the bar so high that if you are providing support for Arch Linux, you can say go read the manual, because the manual is actually good. Whereas if you're on anything else, it's harder to point people towards the manual, because it's not like say for example you're supporting BSPWM. BSPWM's documentation is not that great. It's in a man page of all things, and pointing to a brand new Linux. Now, granted, a brand new Linux user is probably not going to be using BSPWM, but you can get the idea. Like, you point them towards a man page, they're like, what the hell's a man page? You know what I mean? How do I even do this thing, right? It's really bad. I feel really bad for Gary, because I think he keeps getting kicked off. I'm not sure why. I'm pretty sure it's his internet problem, but I told him to use a different browser. Anyways, new to Linux, go ahead.
Yeah, just send people who are noobs to easy to use distros. My 82-year-old dad's using Linux Mint. He hasn't had a single question. Once I set him up with a browser, all he wanted was Dropbox and his password manager. Everything just works. So there's nothing to complain about. So, I mean, Dark Zero is maintaining a niche distro on his own as a one-man project. So of course that's going to be something that's going to cause him aggravation when people can't do the thing that they want to do. There's not a giant community to take care of it for him. So.
Well, and if you're a brand new user and you chose your first distro as Gentoo, that's more of like you made the wrong choice kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like you need to, granted, I mean, maybe you didn't know better, but I mean, you kind of should have known better not to choose Linux from scratch as your first distro. You know what I mean? That's just, that wasn't a good choice. You should use something that was more your skill level. But I think that there's a confusion amongst new users that all distros are basically the same. Now, as people who use Linux for a long time, we can basically say, yeah, that's kind of true on a very broad sense. You know what I mean? They all have very similar aspects. They have a package manager, they have a desktop environment, they have all these things, right? But if you're a brand new user, the differences that are there are magnified because you don't know what you're talking about, or you don't know what you're doing yet. So every little thing between distros is going to seem like a big deal. It's not until you're much more experienced that realize that the differences really aren't as big as you once made them out to be. So I think that, yeah, we always do tend to put a lot of the criticism about the support that Linux offers on the developers or the maintainers of the distro or the maintainers of the software, or even the support community that surrounds those things, right? We put a lot of the onus on being good on those people. And that's, I think, legitimately an okay thing to do, because they should be the responsible ones in a lot of cases. But there is I think I made a video on this just recently, that there are responsibilities on the part of the user as well, knowing you have to be willing to learn new things. And Drew, you mentioned patience. That goes both ways. You have to be, you can't go into a forum. You can't go into a Linux Mint forum, ask a question, and then be very, very upset that they didn't answer it within the next 3 seconds. Okay. That's just not the way that it works. If you want instantaneous answers, go ask ChatGPT or Claude. forums just don't work that way. Sometimes you'll go days without a response. It's just because maybe nobody knows the answer, or maybe you asked it in a weird way and people are just kind of ignoring it or whatever. There's any different reasons why you're not getting an answer for. You're just you're in the wrong place, and nobody has bothered to tell you. That happens. But the patience is a big deal, and like I said, it goes both ways. And if you are one of those people who expects, I mean, far be it from me to complain about the kids these days, but instant gratification is a thing. Like, people are so used to heading over to Google and grabbing the answer like instantaneously from the top result, probably because you didn't scroll any further. Especially, it's even worse now with their AI summaries or whatever. And if you don't get that answer instantaneously, you feel like you're being slighted and you're being disrespected. And why hasn't somebody come and done the work for me? So, I mean, and kids these days, right? All right. Steve, go ahead.
I wanted to say that new to Linux, you hit it on the you hit the nail on the head. It's a small niche distro. That's why they tend to get people's request for support gets magnified, and things get more frustrating when they shouldn't be. But I learned my lesson after 5 years of maintaining Zero Linux. I learned my lesson where you should set expectations from the get-go. That's what I did. Now, when people get Zero Linux, they read the 2 lines that I wrote. Don't expect the level of support that you get from bigger distros. So now that I set the expectations, everything is much better. I am able to control support and everything, but still, I do still catch myself being a little bit of an annoying support guy from time to time, but less and less these days. And there's a lot of misunderstanding by users towards distros, is where they over expect things from those distros. But it's up to us, the distro maintainers, to set expectations. This is the most important thing. We have to set expectations before we attack anything. And since I've been doing that, it's been calming down, especially now that I added, like I mentioned earlier, biometric support. Zero Linux is one of the very few distros out there that has biometric GUI tools. One for the fingerprint, one for Windows Hello supported webcams, and I'm getting a lot of requests for support, and I'm able to support those things. But I tell them from the get-go that it does not support every single piece of fingerprint or whatever cameras. So temper your expectations, and it's been doing good. So this is what we all every single niche distro or smaller distro popping up here and there, they should set expectations, which they don't always do.
Go ahead.
All right. Well, first, I heard Gentoo mentioned for new users. I just wanted to come to the defense of Gentoo. And actually, I think Arch, for that matter, even though it wasn't attacked, I think it used to be a few years ago anyways, don't quote me on this, but in the manual or the how-to or installation guide or the introduction about the distro, maybe, it would mention that, like, this distribution is not for new users. We expect you to have this certain bar of knowledge, be able to even install it. And if a new user got Gentoo installed, man, more power to them. Like, that's a great feat for a brand new user to get Gentoo installed. And as far as support goes, yeah, your new users, they want things to work. And I wasn't trying to attack new users or the user support in any fashion. Like, it is they just want stuff to work and they're frustrated and they come try to ask a question and they don't understand that there are multiple things that there's a lot of X factors in their question that they didn't mention because they don't know about. So we have to ask, a more detailed question to get the answers we need to answer their question. And in a forum, that may take, like days, like you said, Matt.
Yeah.
There is especially in today's world with AI and instant answers, it's the expectations are way different than what they used to be.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, so just on the Gentoo thing real quick, I mean, it's silly because I know I mentioned that, but there are Gentoo install scripts, right? And if you stumbled on one of those, you could theoretically, as a new user, work your way through one fairly easily, actually, because some of those installers are actually fairly good. I mean, the arguments there are that you don't learn anything about Gentoo because you learn everything you need to know about Gentoo while setting it up. But you could theoretically start doing it, but you'd have a hard time afterwards. Like, how do I actually install a program? Like I haven't actually had any exposure to Emerge or any use flags. I mean, so I have, just being the Linux influencer that I am, have found a couple people who said that Gentoo was their first distro, but those guys were super nerds coming into the Linux experience. They weren't just random people off the streets who used to be Windows users. So, Steve, go ahead.
I just wanted to quickly add something to the instant answers from AI. When it comes to Linux, do not trust everything AI tells you, because I've had a lot of people come to my Discord telling me, ChatGPT told me that I should do this. I did it, but it messed up my system. It broke it's no longer bootable. There's one important aspect to AI. They don't know what various distro maintain. I'm talking about niche distros. I'm not talking about mainline distros like Arch or Mint or Gentoo or whatever. I'm talking about us distros like Zero Linux and smaller distros. When it comes to those distros, you cannot ask AI because they don't know what we did as distro maintainers to create that distro. They know Arch, but they don't know Zero Linux, because Zero Linux is a lot of changes on top of Arch. So without that data, AI is not going to be able to provide you with the proper support. A lot of people think that they shouldn't trust AI when it comes to niche distros. So to those users, I say, stop using AI.
So I've seen people blame others for AI getting it wrong. Like, well, AI told me this thing, but it was wrong, so that must be your fault somehow. It's weird. So the thing I know for sure when it comes to support is that it's not going to be fixed. This is just the way that it is. Part of it is a symptom of fragmentation, as we talked about earlier. Some of it's just the fact that there is a certain level of elitism that exists in the Linux community, especially by people who have been here for a long time. I'm guilty of it in some cases. A lot of times it's tongue in cheek with me. But if people don't know me, it may not come across that way, and I have to be careful about that. But people who have been here for a long time tend to judge others, based on their own personal experiences, and that's not the greatest thing. I mean, I know there's going to be some people in the comment section like, oh, Matt turned woke or whatever, but that's not really what I'm talking about. I think that the longer you use Linux, the more you forget what it's like to be someone who hasn't used Linux the entire time, and also you forget how different Windows is when you haven't used it in a long time. So when someone's coming from Windows and they have that experience and they come here trying to treat it like Windows, it frustrates people who are trying to provide support, and that means that usually you just end up frustrating and angering each other, and only one of you is going to leave and go back to Windows. So the transaction of support I think I just keep coming back to this over and over again. It has to be really, you have to have patience, you have to have empathy if you're going to provide support. You can't be so dialed into your rules and your experiences of using Linux that you can't adapt to people who just don't know any better. And the way that I try to do things, like you really do you get what you put out, or whatever. I don't know what the saying is, but the more you, if you can try to provide, that support in a way that you treat others as you want to be treated, I guess is the way that I'd put it, right? So maybe I'm just too whatever. Drew, go ahead.
Can we just change gears just for a second here?
Yeah.
Because I would ask the question, does Linux have like a user experience problem? So Linux desktop would, even if, let's just say, all the file management, it magically just packaging was just magically solved tomorrow, Linux, would it still lack a unified feel because it's not designed as a one single end-to-end user experience? You have different button placement, different file pickers, different font rendering, different theme behavior, and so on. You have Qt apps and GTK apps and Electron apps and Java apps. And in that inconsistency, is this a problem that discourages new users to the point where it's just like, I don't like the way this looks? And they don't necessarily have the ability to kind of like make it more streamlined and more visually appealing to them? So I guess that's in there is a question, Matt. I'm not really sure where I'm going with this.
Well, I guess I'll revert it right back onto you, Drew. Are you asking, is there a fragmentation problem on Linux?
Well, didn't I just say that?
Yeah.
Didn't I just say that?
Yeah. I will pass it on to the rest of the group, but I'm just going to say yes. Gnome, go ahead.
Well, I think that distributions try to kind of tackle that problem for you. As far as some distributions are concerned, like most everybody's using systemd nowadays. Only the niche distros even offer something else. Well, I wouldn't say niche. Arch and Gentoo aren't niche, but your mainline distros, they make the decisions for you, and that's why the support channels it's easier to get support in something like Ubuntu or Kubuntu or whatever flavor you're using, or Mint, Cinnamon, Mint Monte, whatever, because they've made these decisions. They know what all the backend stuff is, so your question doesn't have to be as elaborate. You don't have to know as much to ask a good question in one of those distros, because they've tried to avoid the fragmentation for you and bring it into their community. While it's not a closed garden, it's the support is closed to their distribution, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Big IU fan. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the short answer to your question, Drew, is yeah, it's a problem, but I also think it's a problem that I don't want solved. And what I mean by that is what it implies if it does get solved. I mean, and maybe Ganon was saying this a little bit, but the thing is you go with a desktop environment, and that's your consistency, or theoretically it's your consistency, as long as the applications bow to the stylings that environment puts forth. But my concern about, of course, is that I was around dealing with Unix questions back in the day when Unix, and shortly after that Linux, could have totally wiped the floor with Windows. But Microsoft had a crazy marketing machine, and there were so many. Every vendor had their own Unix. I mean, and they were different. They might have been based on either System 5 or BSD, but bottom line was they were different, and that didn't necessarily translate. So they're basically duking it out between themselves. And in the meantime, up strolls Microsoft with an okay operating system that did hit its stride with NT 351 NT4. But bottom line is that if there was a standard way and all the vendors had gotten on board, Unix was absolutely a stronger platform, and it even had a environment that still exists today that we're trying to get off of with X. So, you know, I know what you're saying, and I've been trying my best. I got my son onto Linux, and I've mostly convinced my daughter. My wife has been using it since I installed it on hers. I went with Zorin because I knew it'd be easier. I'm a cachy guy now. I didn't want her to have to mess with anything, call me in the middle of the day, have me deal with something. But they, you know, that's it. They're going to see that one thing, and they're not going to know about anything else. If you could somehow funnel everybody to one place, that'd be one thing. And then let them make choices after they learn. I may prefer a Arch-based distro, but the idea of having people go to one place and all of us having a different idea about what that one place is, that's rough.
So, I mean, I think we talked about fragmentation and the too many distros problems a lot on both the LUG and on the podcast and elsewhere. It's the nature of open source to have too many options, because when a developer realizes they don't want something, they don't like Ubuntu, they go make Linux Mint. If they didn't like the way Debian worked, so they went to make Ubuntu, you know, because Debian was too hard to install. Usually installation tends to be the genesis of a lot of distros. Like Manjaro came along because Arch was too hard to install. The problem, and I agree with you, it's a problem we don't want solved, because if we did solve the fragmentation by just having one distro, let's say we chose Debian just to make Drew happy, you know, it really wouldn't be Linux anymore, because you'd remove the choice. Choice is part of what makes Linux so great. But I think the actual solution here is to have an answer to the question: what's the best new user distro? What's the best user experience that we can say? If we could just all get together in a room, all the entire Linux community, we could just all agree that Linux Mint Cinnamon Edition is the best experience for a new user. And when a new user comes into our community and says, what distro should I use, we point them to that one. All the rest of them can continue to exist. The new user can then go forth and distro hop all they want after they've gotten their toes wet on Linux Mint. But if we could have that solution where it's like, that's the one, you know, the problem is we can't agree. I'd ask GNU to Linux. His experience with Linux Mint would be to say that that's the best new user experience for new users, right? I could just tell by his face that that's something he agrees with. Whereas, you know, if I asked another person who doesn't have the Linux Mint experience, maybe they'd say Zorin, like you say, big IU fan, right? Maybe Zorin is the best new user experience. Personally, I think Linux Mint is the answer there. I know I have my own problems with Linux Mint, but that's more, you know, me and the developers than anything else. But there are so many answers to that question. We can't just, as one person, point towards the answer. That's the reason why the number one Linux question on Google, if you go find the number one question that people ask Google, is what's the best distro? If you if you're a YouTuber and you make a video that says what's the best distro, you're going to get some views, right? It's because that's the question that people ask, and there is no answer that we can say definitively that's where you go. That's what you should try first. It just doesn't exist. And unfortunately, that's the solution, but we can't have it because we can't agree on anything. And even more to not being able to agree on anything, it's not actually always the answer. Some people could install Linux Mint. You could point them towards Linux Mint and they install it on the computer, and it's just an absolute horrible experience. Maybe they have a weird hardware situation. You know, maybe they don't prefer the Windows paradigm in terms of how the look and feel. Maybe there's just applications that won't work. Maybe they can't get peripherals to work because of older hardware dependencies or software dependencies or whatever, right? They have a bad experience. So you're going to have those cases where, you know, even if we had the answer, Linux Mint is the best new user distro, where it's not actually true for someone, in which case maybe Ubuntu is the best distro for them, you know? That's why one of the things when people come out and ask me in my comment section or on the Discord or whatever, what distro should I use as a new user? My answer is always to try them all. Every single one of them. Learn to have fun distro hopping. Eventually, you'll find one that works fantastic. I tell them not to distro hop willy-nilly. Try something. Make sure you put effort into solving problems when you encounter them, but don't be afraid to move from one thing to another and have the experience. Because when you're new to something, a wide experience, a new community, a new hobby or whatever, you don't know what you like until you've tried stuff. You just don't, you have no clue because you have no way of knowing because you haven't tried anything. So it's like when you first learn how to drive. I mean, it's not a great metaphor because you've had probably, even before you learn how to drive, you've had experiences with cars because of your parents or friends or whatever, but you really don't know what type of car you like to drive until you've actually driven a car, you know? You have no experience between a manual and an automatic transmission. You don't have a preference between those two until you've had a chance to use both of them. You're going to go with automatic because kids these days can't do a manual, but the you know, the point is, like, you have to have you have to learn to walk before you can run through and actually know what you're doing. So I'm really bad at metaphors today. It's just not a good experience. Drew, go ahead.
No, I like the metaphor. I like the metaphor of the car. It's like, do you want to drive the Toyota Camry right now, or do you want to drive something, you know, a sports car of some kind? It's like, is that the deterrent there is don't try some of these distros that are like super, super hard. They might be sexy. You know, you want to start driving like Hyperland or Nereon Arch right out of the gate. That's on you, but you may want to drive the Camry for a little while to get yourself used to something, you know?
Well, I mean, Drew, I mean, you have adult kids, but when you first got your kids, when they first started driving and you got them into their first cars, you didn't go out and buy them the thing that's going to cost the most to break and repair. Like my first car was a $200 Delta 88. You know what I mean? And I didn't change the oil because I was a dumbass teenager and burnt the engine up. You don't give the kids the thing that's going to cost $1 million to repair. You got to give them
driving a Honda. That's the answer.
Yes, something that's cheap that they can get there. You can have the experience on to go on. I know the metaphor has now devolved into calling Linux Mint cheap, but that's not really what we're going for here. It's more that's the distro that we're searching for in terms of being the new user distro has to be the one that encompasses the best experience for the most people. Like I said, I think that's Linux Mint. I think a lot of people would agree with that, but Ubuntu is not a bad choice for that. It's just, I think the reason why I don't choose Ubuntu is because the UI is significantly different than what people are usually coming from when it comes to Windows. It's not a Windows-like experience. You know, it's not a horrible experience. It's not like sending them to Vanilla GNOME or you know, even something with KDE with just way too many options. You know, so I just think that for me personally, Mint is the answer, and it just, I don't know. Big IU fan, go ahead.
So yeah, Linux, I wouldn't call Mint cheap, and I know you weren't doing that, but it's safe. I think that's what it is. It's safer than other choices. And I've run it in the past myself. And Drew's mentioned about Hondas. My first 7 cars were Hondas. And back to your manual automatic stuff, Matt, was that all my cars were sticks. And then one day we bought a new Honda Accord, and it was only available in automatic. And my wife drove it, and that was the end. After that, we didn't go back to manual. She was like, wow, I like this automatic stuff. So we found out that we preferred that distro versus our old distro. But yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, and safe is good, it really matters what the person's background is. I mean, I've been doing IT for almost 41 years. I'll take any distro just for fun, but I'm not going to suggest that to my wife, my daughter. It's just that's not the way it works. So we're kind of like the ambassadors. I think most of us, I won't, not everybody maybe, but most of us are probably the ambassadors for tech to the rest of our families. And there's a certain, I guess, responsibility to that or something. I mean, you're getting called at all times just to find out that somebody had a problem and you're trying to fix it. And what those people, the people in your lives, what probably needs to go on there, and you're just not going to put initially. You're not going to put Arch on there. I mean, I'm totally comfortable with it myself, but I'm not comfortable with most of the people that I'd tell, hey, you need to try out this new thing called Linux, to do something like that. But I would be okay with Mint. I'd be okay. I'm okay with Zorin. I mean, since it's Ubuntu based, it's about the same. I'm not an Ubuntu fan itself. That's just me. Even though I was way back in the day, I would prefer to put Debian on there than Ubuntu. But we know what's safe, and that's what I think we're really talking about.
For those of you who are looking for the hat change on the bingo card, there you go. I think safe is the word we were looking for instead of cheap. You want to, I mean, we're gonna beat the hell out of this metaphor, but if you're giving a kid a car as their first car, you want to make sure that they're not going to, if they crash into a tree, you want to make sure that they're as safe as possible. And that's the reason why you would give them something that has seat belts and has all 4 tires that are properly aired, and has the oil change, all this stuff. Whereas with you don't put them on a window manager on Gen 2 that has no steering wheel and no anti-lock brake system, is power steering is shot, and you have to actually build it in with a use flag. You know what I mean? So I really, I mean, the funny thing is that we have this conversation, and we've been having this conversation for 30 years. And it's just 30 years from now, some of us will still be here in a Linux user group somewhere, and we'll be still having the same conversation. What's the best new Linux user distro? I mean, it's possible by then there won't be distros anymore, and we'll all just be using AR glasses on top of our faces or whatever. But I mean, if there's still computers in 30 years, we're probably still having the same conversation. Is Linux too fragmented? Is the support too elitist? What's the best new user distro? And the reason why we still have those conversations 30 years from now or whenever is because there's no answer. There's no answer that we can agree on. It's just the way that it is. So, someone in the chat earlier said that one of the reasons why new users tend to have problems when it comes to getting support from distros is they don't have, I'm paraphrasing here because I don't remember the exact wording, but they said that they don't know the difference between a developer and an owner. So when you see if you're using, Ubuntu or whatever, you think that they have the responsibility of support, right? And the thing that doesn't exist on Linux, whereas it kind of exists with Microsoft, because not necessarily Microsoft, but the laptop manufacturer that you bought your computer from, they have a responsibility of support for at least a certain period of time. Whereas when you install Linux, there's no responsibility of support from anybody for any of the software that you use, right? You can use the key map input remapper thing, right? The developer of that is great. They tend to be very responsive, but if they weren't, that's okay too, because that's just the way some developers are. Some developers put their software out there because they have a public GitHub, but really all that software was just for them. They have no interest whatsoever in actually supporting the thing, and that's perfectly fine. But that's something that a lot of new users don't get. If you put software out there, they expect you to provide support, and they think that you have the responsibility to provide support as a developer. And I think that that is something that it's a misunderstanding of the way open source works, because there is no responsibility of support. And unless you're paying somebody for something, like if you pay, like Zorin has that pro tier or whatever, right? If you pay them money, then they have a responsibility to support you. Same with Canonical Pro or Ubuntu Pro, whatever it's called. You know, you pay for that, then they have the responsibility. The free level stuff, I think somebody else said it in the chat. If you don't pay for it, there's nothing there, because there's no money that was actually changed hands, so they have no responsibility for you whatsoever. So I think that we could be, I mean, we'd have to find a way to make that apparent to people without scaring them away, because for the most part, it doesn't matter that there was no money changed hands. You can still get support. It's just community-based support. People who don't actually have a responsibility, but they have a I don't know, civic duty. It's something that they put on themselves to provide the support. We did kind of meander a little bit off from the main topic, but I think it was a good topic to have. So I guess my wrap-up question is to kind of bring it back to what we originally talked about. Is there anything that Linux is missing right now, software, hardware, support-wise, desktop environment, window manager, whatever, that you guys feel is missing that we didn't talk about? Personally, I think that Linux is missing better Wayland compositors, because Hyperland ain't it. I'm sorry, that developer guy is just too flaky. He can't be trusted. He changes stuff too often. Now it feels like he's rebuilding something in Lua. I'm just done. I'm done with Hyperland. I don't know if that was an April Fool's Day joke or whatever, but I'm done with it. Neri and Mango Hut are fine, but they're still brand new. I do like that there's more choices now than there was like a few months ago or a year ago or whatever. But I'm looking for my Qtile on Wayland to be better, and it's just not there yet. So that's the thing that I personally, as a nerd, that I'm missing, is better Wayland support for window managers. So anybody else have anything like that they'd like to share before we hop off and end this thing? Going once. Oh, big IU fan, go ahead.
Yeah, about your Wayland compositors. Hey, can we standardize on just one? Can we pick one that wins? No, anyway, there's tons of them. But you know, like Neri is Smithy, or I don't know if you pronounce it Smithy or Smith A, but anyway, based. And then you got the WSL roots, and then the WL roots, and Hyperland. You know, Vaxry went his own route and dumped them and decided to do his own thing. And I sure hope that if you saw something about Lou, I didn't look that up. I haven't been on Hyperland for a while because I'm on Neri. And I love it, and it's gotten better and better. And I'm one of those guys who doesn't understand why people have as many problems as they do. Sometimes you, Matt, with the different things, but hey, we all have different hardware, and that's just kind of the way it works. But yeah, I don't know if we need more compositors. That's hard, because I mean, KDE has theirs, GNOME has theirs. I mean, we've all got there's plenty. There are really a lot. You just want your one rock solid ones, what you want with all the portals available and everything else. That's what you want.
If Qtile was better on Wayland, I'd be happy.
Yeah.
I think that so when we were in Xorg for the longest time, and everybody was there before Wayland was a thing, Xorg was the thing. Right, that was the thing that everybody used. You know, it was Xmonad or DWM or GNOME or KDE. They all use the same stuff. With the Wayland thing, everybody's doing their own things. There's no it's not that the compositors themselves are different, which they are, but they're all based on something different. Whether it's WL roots, a specific version of WL roots. You know, if you're using a different version and you compile it wrong, you know, whatever, you're screwed. Wayland is I mean, we've talked about this. We talked about it with Brody the last time he was on the podcast. Wayland is a mess in terms of standards, because there's no standard. Everybody uses their own things. The basis for the compositors are all different. You got Vaxry who can't decide what he's doing, so he just changes things constantly. I think I would like to say that it's going to get better as time goes on. Like there'll be a winner, right? Someone will develop something based on WL roots or whatever, or create something new, and it will be so good that all the other window managers decide they're going to adopt it, right? But it feels like we're past the point of that. Like it feels like we're just gonna have to live with the fact that there's WL roots, there's this thing, there's that thing, there's the other thing, and they're all gonna be different, and that's just the way that's gonna be. Unfortunately, this is
WL roots is deficient. That's the problem.
the developers are deficient. That's just all right. Gary, go ahead.
Yeah, something. I mean, it's been said before. I'm just bringing it up again, just because something triggered me. Somebody said, the package managers, the disconnect in the package managers is just like crazy. It's like I've had some things where it's works a little flaky and said, well, don't use Flatpak, use the snap, run the one in your Fedora. I use Fedora. So sometimes I'll find something in Fedora that's still in their repo, but it's really old and it's a piece of garbage. Mm-hmm. So then you go, it's just all over the place. And then I'll look for something I want to use, and it's like, well, it's Debian. So then you go through the list. Here's a Debian version. Here's an Arch version. There's nothing for Red Hat Fedora. So here's the thing to the Git. So now you can go get it and compile it and install it another way. So that's just my comment on that one.
Finding the software that you need to use can be challenging, given the fact that it's all different in all different places. That's what Flatpak and Snaps were supposed to solve, and
they haven't yet.
No, and they're not going to, because it turns out they're just another repo that you have to deal with. They happen to be cross distro, like we're, but the answer to that question is Nix. Nix has the biggest repository. It's not the answer for anybody, really anybody, but it's the answer.
I might go that way. I could try that out.
There have been some instances where the software isn't there, but it's been phenomenally easy to build the package. You just create your own, a little configuration file and point it towards the get the source code and give it a hash, and it will build it for you. But it's completely over the heads of the vast majority of people who actually want to use Linux. It's just not something you want to deal with. Anyways, GNU to Linux, go ahead.
I was just going to ask Gary if that is an old reel-to-reel tape recorder behind him, because it looks very similar to the one that my dad has from 1968 that still works with a tube in it and everything.
These are both solid state. This large one here is a Sony TC850. This one, it's a web core, but it's a solid state one.
Oh, cool.
I think we can go to. I'll do the reel-to-reel cast.
I'm sure there'd be some people who would watch that, because we're all very much nerdies. All right.
There are. Yeah, there's lots of stuff out there.
Yeah. Gnome, go ahead.
I just wanted to agree with Gary about the having to download some packages and compile them yourself. And then you have the problem that your package manager is not tracking it, and there's no way to update it unless you have to re-download and recompile it by hand again manually. It's a pain in the neck.
Well, we're just gonna beat fragmentation to death, but it's fragmentation. Like, everyone wanted to do their own package managers. So some of them brought distros along with them, some of them whatever. But I think that's one of the reasons why the Debian ecosystem is so grand, because you can use a lot of different distros and still basically have the same experience with package management. So you can, if you're on Debian, whether you're on Debian or Ubuntu or Linux Mint or Zorn or whatever, your experience is going to be pretty much the same when it comes to packages, because they basically all pull from the same general repositories, whether it's going to be the Debian repository, the Ubuntu repository, or, chances are they have access to both, right? Now they have different policies when it comes to Flatpaks or snaps or whatever, but if at least if you're a terminal user, you're going to have basically the same experience. It's when you get outside of the Debian ecosystem where things kind of really fall apart. So you have Pacman with Arch, you have Zypper with OpenSUSE, you have the Nix stuff, whatever. I mean, is Solus still even a thing? I don't know. They've done their own thing, right? Every distro does their own thing, and I mean, I went back to what I said earlier, where you kind of, if the best solution for new users is to try them all. But when you do try them all, you're going to have that experience. Remember when Linus did his first Linux challenge, when he started on Pop! OS and he did apt, and then he went to Manjaro and tried to do apt again. That's the experience people have, because they don't realize that experience is going to be different. And I think that was probably the most honest part of his challenge, saying that. But that's definitely something that people have a problem with, is that the thing. But I have a feeling that we're having nerd problems. So we have different expectations for our package manager than a regular new user would have, because most new users aren't going to pop into a terminal and know what a difference between a snap and a Flatpak is. They're going to an app store. If it ain't there, they ain't downloading it. Right? That's just the way that it is. They'll go to the GNOME Software Center or whatever and download Chrome. That's what they'll do. And if it's not there, they ain't downloading it. That's just the way that it is. So, Drew, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to agree with you, Matt, about Wayland for a minute, because the issue for me, and again, I might be a different use case in that I am a Debian user. I have currently on this machine right here, I have DWM, BSPWM, Qtile, i3, and Sway. And of those that are on this machine, I actually would like to use Sway more, but I find myself every so often wanting to do a screen share, and I can't do it. And I blame Wayland clearly for that, because as soon as I go back to i3, BSPWM, anything else, I can do it very easily. And I think that standard that you're talking about is where we are, where I can't use something that I would prefer to use. And it is the latest and greatest. I mean, technically not on Debian, but still, you get the idea. I can't use it. I would like to, but I just don't.
Well,
to your point, Matt, yeah, I think I would like to use Qtile on Wayland, please.
Yeah, if they would just get it done. But I have a feeling 5 years from now we're still going to be asking for Qtile and Wayland. Like they're rewriting a lot of the back end, because again, WL roots is shit. They're doing all this stuff, and I think maybe eventually they'll get there. I know that it's way better than it was 2 or 3 years ago. It's actually usable now, but it's a problem. So the thing is with Wayland is that there's so many more moving parts. There's Wayland, but then there's the portal system, right? And if you don't have the precise exact portal that you need, you're screwed, because some of this stuff doesn't work. And this is where the distros have kind of a problem, is a lot of them have compiled the portals in such a way that they don't always support the things that you need them to support them to. So you kind of, if you get it from a repository somewhere, you're kind of at the mercy of how they compiled it with what flags and stuff like that. If you built it yourself, then you're always going to have to, I mean, this stuff moves so fastly, good Lord, man. It moves so fast that you would have to compile it basically once every 2 or 3 days in order to make sure you're on top of things. There, as much as I complain about Vaxry, there's a reason why he rewrote everything to support his little window manager, because he wanted control over every moving part of that in order to make sure that it all worked together. Because when it was on WL roots, he had to pin it to a specific version of WL roots. He had to pin it to a specific version of the portal before he had the Hyperland portal. And to do all these things, that was very much reliant on other developers who have certain ways of doing things. That's the reason why he created his own ecosystem. Now he has other problems where he continually rewrite stuff in new languages. He language hops. That is like, that's a new thing for me. It's not actually a new thing for me, but it's just, when you have so many people relying on you, probably shouldn't be so fascinated with different languages. But there's just so many moving parts, and that's it's a problem. Someone has to come along, whether it's a big company or a developer who actually knows what they're doing, and create the system D of Wayland. And I know that's gonna piss people off, but system D is not just one thing. It's many things, but it's all under one umbrella, all controlled, granted, by a company. But, there's not all these many moving pieces that have no way to communicate with each other. You know, I mean, they're all. It's like chickens in a coop, just all doing whatever the hell they want to do. It's a hard thing.
Do you think that X11 is going to have a longer life
Absolutely.
because of the things that you're just mentioning?
Absolutely, especially in the enthusiast community where you Drew, like you use window managers, like and same with me, like I use window manager. I'm an Xorgian. Every time I try Wayland, I have some little paper cuts that eventually drive me back to Xorg. And that's not, it's no longer, it used to be those choices were based on what hardware you had, like NVIDIA cards. Now it's more just user experience things, being able to actually do screen sharing, for example. I mean, who knows what that problem actually is, because other people can do screen sharing. But when you go to get support from someone, like if you wanted to go to get support for your Sway issue, Drew, you probably would go to the Sway forums. I almost guarantee that at least half the responses that you're going to get are, well, it works for me. And like, well, first off, good fucking for you. You know what I mean? like just because it works for you doesn't mean it also works for me. We have different hardware. We have different, and probably the other half will be, well, if you weren't using Debian and we're using something with newer software support, that's going to be another response that you're going to get. So it's the Wayland stuff is really hard to get behind, not because it's not good and not needed, but because of the way that it's been managed, in that it's not managed at all. There's just it needs there needs to be, like, Xorg has a foundation behind it, right? It still exists. There's like members of the board. Wayland desperately needs that, where there's some foundation that has power over the thing and all of the moving parts, at least some kind of power, maybe not like almighty Jafar power, but some kind of power where you can kind of like mold people into a direction that works for everybody. Now, there's always going to be like the Dev1 people or whatever who go a different route, but at least can make the majority use the thing that's going to work for the most people. We need the Linux Mint of Wayland is basically what we need. So far it's just not happened. Sorry, big IU fan, go ahead.
I'll never remember everything. I'm too old to remember everything I had. So I know you didn't necessarily say this, but it's not Wayland in quotes, Wayland's problem that Qtile won't go there. That's not Wayland. That's not the Wayland protocol's problem. That's Qtile's problem. They could do it if they wanted to do it. That's just, I mean, it's like saying, well, KDE didn't find a way to make it there, or GNOME, or any of the other people, any of the other environments or Windows managers that you want to have over there. It's entirely up to the people that develop that to get it there. It's not like a fault of Wayland. And Wayland is technically organized by Free Desktop.
Right. Yes, I forgot about that.
Okay, so there is a place. And I also feel like, look, first of all, I'm the old guy in the room, and I find it almost ironic that I'm totally on board with Wayland, and the fact that, I remember, X servers, because that's what we're running on our desktops. It's a bizarre concept these days, and if they were to design it today, they would never create X like it is. It would never be created like this. Whether it would look like Wayland, I don't know, but it wouldn't look like it does now, because back then our desktops weren't desktops. They were terminals. They were something that had no ability to run graphical programs. They were all running back on the server. So it's almost like apples and oranges. And it's kind of a rough thing there. And I also don't think that Wayland is, because we talk about like how it doesn't have, again, this is a bigger conversation than you've got time for, obviously, but I don't think Wayland is not it's as complicated as I guess it needs to be. I mean, it doesn't have everything that everybody wants, I guess, because it's not designed that way. It's a protocol that as people recognize something that needs to exist, they're like, oh, that needs to exist. We need to be able to do XYZ, and someone creates that thing that maybe Plasma needs or Gnome or whoever it is. They need to have that conversation, and they create that protocol, and they go on from there. So I don't know. I mean, I've tried to adopt both with to Wayland. I don't know. I guess since 5 or 6 years ago, when I really started trying to do the whole the only desktop I'd run when I started working from home after COVID. And one last thing about the packages. I mean, you do remember like that Windows had and still does multiple packagers. You don't just, it's not just like Microsoft makes the packages. There was the Wise package handler, there's Install Shield, there's all these different packages. I mean, they're not exactly the same format. They may be executables, but they're not the same format.
Yeah, but nobody uses those things.
Sure they do.
No. Listen to me. Nobody normal uses those things. My mom uses Windows just across the street. She doesn't use those things. You know, if she needs an application, she goes to the Windows Store. Now, granted, the Windows Store didn't always exist, and before that, you had other solutions. That's absolutely true. But nowadays, if you need something, you either go to the website for the thing, or you go to the Windows Store. You probably go to the store first, and it's the reason why when a new user comes to Linux, the first place they go to is going to be the store. They're not going to go. The vast majority of new users don't default to using the terminal to install their programs. It's just the way that it is, right?
Yep. So as much as you don't like it, what you really need and want is FlatHub or something like that. That's what you want.
And it's the thing is, like, we complain about Flatpak a lot, and it has its issues, but for the most part, Flatpak has done what we wanted it to do. It's ubiquitous enough across the new user distros that it works fine. And
yes.
Snaps, if you're going to use Ubuntu, work and function similarly enough that if you switch between them, you're not going to notice a difference. Only nerds are going to really notice the difference. So it has done what it needs to do. It's when you encounter something that's not there where you start having the problems. Right?
I agree. Just like the Microsoft Store, just like Android, et cetera, the Google Store or whatever, and Google Play. It's incumbent upon the developer to get it there. And if they choose not to do that, then we're hosed, unless you want to make your own, out of the source code. So that's what really needs to happen. If we want it to be standardized, then they have to get on board with it, really.
So I wanted to disagree with you a little bit on the Qtile thing, because Qtile does have Wayland support, right? Part of the reason why it's not so good, not all of it, but part of the reason why it's not so good is because they found some of the Wayland protocols, specifically those related to creating a Wayland compositor, to not be good enough. So they've had to rebuild a whole bunch of the bottom stuff, just like Vax did, in order to make the tooling actually work for what they're doing. Part of it is because they didn't want to, I think what they're rebuilding now is simply because they didn't care for the tooling and the language that the stuff that they're rebuilding was originally written in. So I think that's more of a preference thing for them, but it's still a thing. I think part of the things that I've read, the Qtile guys have had some major issues when it comes to the stuff that goes around Wayland, things like the portal, things like the tooling and stuff like that, right? And I think it's a legitimate complaint when it comes to Wayland itself, that Wayland isn't a monolithic thing, right? You can't just say I'm using Wayland. You can say that, but it's fudging the truth a little bit, because you're not just using Wayland. You're using Wayland and maybe WL roots, and maybe you're using a portal, and you have all these things that kind of work together in a suite of tooling, right? And where I think my biggest problem with Wayland is that the suite of tooling doesn't necessarily, what works for me in terms of the combination of tooling that to make Wayland work well may not work exactly the same for you, because you have different hardware, you have different needs in terms of stuff. Obviously, the same tooling that I use to use Sway doesn't work for Drew, because my screen sharing works perfectly fine. I'm also not on a real distro, so maybe that's the problem. You know what I mean? So I think there's a big difference in the Wayland conversation if you're talking about GNOME and KDE versus window managers. You know, because if you're using GNOME and KDE, it's actually more accurate to say you're using Wayland, because they've kind of packaged everything together, right? You don't if you install KDE, you don't really have to worry about the portal, because it just comes along as an absolute permanent dependency for KDE. Same thing with GNOME; it comes with its own portal. You can't install one without the other. It just is the way that it works, right? Whereas if you're installing a Wayland compositor, it doesn't always come with the right portal that you're supposed to use, because especially on some of the more mainline distros, they just tend to ship the WL Roots portal for you, whether you like it or not. If you want a specific portal, like the Hyperland portal or whatever, you have to actually go seek that out. Now, that's not true, I think, very much anymore, but that's absolutely the way that it used to be. I think that will probably get sorted out as the package maintainers actually realize what dependencies need to be shipped. But still, the conversations are completely different when it comes to that, right? So
before I mute myself, one last thing, then kind of my rebuttal to is that what you're saying though is that Qtile they don't have a problem with Wayland. They have a problem with the compositor, and that's a different thing. They need a compositor that can do what they need it to do, and they apparently are not willing to do it themselves and can't find one that works for them, that works for them adequately for what they need to do. Wayland is a protocol. It's not a thing. It's the way people design compositors and build them that implement the Wayland protocols. And if they're having a problem with that, then that's what it's about. And that's what Vaxry had a problem with. He didn't want to hang around for WL Roots and whatever they decided to do and how they were going to do it. So he made a compositor that implemented the Wayland protocols that he wanted.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, it feels more like we're fighting over the way of saying things. You know what I mean? Instead of the
I agree.
actual
It's a terminology thing.
right. The problem is, like, all that stuff matters. Like, if the thing that you're using doesn't work for you, the thing that you blame probably is the protocols themselves, even if it's not that. But I think the thing here is that there hasn't been a standard of tooling that has been developed surrounding the protocols that has been able to say, you know, that's the thing that works for everybody. It just doesn't exist, right? Because everybody has had to create their own tooling in order to actually get things to work. We have to, before poor GNOME and Drew forget exactly what they need to say, we need to move on. GNOME, go ahead.
I wrote my stuff down. That's not putting from good.
That's the best.
No, I was going to talk about the remote sessions and, you know, like what they call thin client now in the industry. Linux was way ahead of its time on that. You could have one beefy machine like your X server and spin up multiple seats and have your other machines dial in to different ports. And each one, you could display a different desktop on each one if you wanted to. Like different user accounts. That's what they do nowadays in, you know, corporate business with your thin client. You each have your own user profile you can sign into. Linux was doing this 20, 30 years ago, and that's part of the problem. I haven't actually kept up with this, so I'm maybe not be current. But at least 12 months ago, there was no real good like VNC server or way to capture desktops like that and serve multiple ones from the same host without running like, you know, multiple VMs or like a Proxmox or something. So that's part of the reluctance to switch to Hyperland or not Hyperland, to Wayland in some environments, because you don't have that functionality. And they're like 30 years ago, it is a great functionality, but it's extremely insecure. So without the proper safeguards, it can be very dangerous.
Honestly, I think that the thing we're arguing about is that portals aren't good. Portals are theoretically a good idea, but it just adds an extra level of fragmentation onto an already fragmented system. Because there's so many different portals that are there. Even across distros, the same portal may not work exactly the same. And part of that problem is because of hardware, admittedly, right? They're trying, the portals, at least in part, were built because they needed a way to have things talk to each other. Because part of the Wayland protocols is everything's sandbox. It's not, you can't actually have things talk to another. So things like global key bindings, things like screen sharing that require one application to have control over another part of the system. And that's what at least in part, what portals are meant to do. The problem is that nobody could agree on which you actually needed for them to do. So we ended up with 12 different portals. Each, GNOME has one, KDE has one, Hyperland has one, WL Roots has one. All of them have their own. They all do something separately and differently. And it's ended up with the same fragmentation thing that we argued about earlier. So it's his entire situation. Drew, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't remember what I was going to say.
That's funny.
No, I'm just kidding. So isn't WL Roots kind of a moving target? I mean, because like Qtile is undergoing, you have to look at WL Roots. It's like it's undergoing fast development, which means API churn. When it changes, Qtile's backend and Python bindings have to be updated before Qtile can safely support the new version. And even with that, the packaging for your distro may not support both, Python and WL Roots and Qtile all in the same kind of like space. One thing can break very easily, which is why I think Qtile's on like 0.33 right now. And granted, it's not the same, okay, because we're talking about Qtile for Wayland, but I'm on Qtile 0.31 because all of those things in Debian right now work together, WL Roots and Python and so on. So yeah, it's kind of like I said, a lot of a moving target for a lot of these. And so if WL Roots was more standardized, maybe I'm wrong. I don't even know. I'm just talking. If it was more standardized, then there wouldn't be such a moving target and things could get built in a more like sane fashion.
So I have a hot take.
Okay.
I think that eventually WL Roots will be dead. Nobody will use it. I mean, maybe Sway will still use it because they kind of go hand in hand together. But as is, I think eventually, a lot of the Wayland compositors or Wayland window managers or whatever that are going to need this compositor to do things, they'll just go on and do their own things. That's what Qtile is doing. It's what Hyperland has done. It's what Neri has done, I think. They just... I don't think that it's necessarily that WL Roots is bad. It was a good starting point. I just think that the development behind it is so both opinionated and slow that it's not something that a lot of developers are going to want. As more and more window managers are, come online, and maybe they'll start off as WL Roots, but eventually they just won't have the things. WL Roots won't have have all the things that those compositors will need in order to actually do the things that they want to do. So I think eventually, my hot take is that WL Roots will be abandoned eventually. It just won't be maintained anymore. I may be wrong about that. That's why it's a hot take. But yeah. Drew, do you think that because you have a unique experience, not a unique experience, but you're on Debian. Do you think that your experience is shaped mostly because of the way Debian does packages, or yeah,
for sure. Yeah. I mean, again, the goal for me is never going to be to be on the new like sexy. It's just not. I want my shit to work. and I want it to work really like seamlessly, and I want it to work for a long time. And I don't want updated packages because it works. And so the only thing that Debian provides is kind of like security patches after a 2-year, after this 2-year window. So yeah, I am shaped by the fact that I just want basic packages. And if I have to, again, I have created deb packages for the things that I would like to keep more up to date. I have a deb package for Zen and Helium browser and Rofi and a few other things that I keep maintained for anybody who is a Debian user and wants to have the latest, and NeoVim for that matter, because they just come out with version 12.1, 0.12.1. And all those things, because I don't want to be on 0.10 something on the Debian packages, which just doesn't make sense. So anyway, yeah, I am definitely shaped by having to keep, but again, like I said, I dabble in other areas too.
I mean, to solve the problem that you were talking about, I think what a lot of these places, especially Hyperland, need is a true LTS thing. That something
a pinned version.
Yes. So yeah, it's older, but the problem with a lot of these is that they are willy-nilly with the breaking changes. You know what I mean? And just the other day, Vaxxer introduced another breaking change, something that was going to be depreciated and had moved to something else. That's like the third one in the last 3 or 4 months. Usually, this has to do with window rules because the man cannot decide how to do a window rule. It's just constantly changing. But a lot of the Wayland stuff is like that, where because it is, it's not new anymore, but a lot of the compositors are new. They're discovering how they want to do things, and that leads to breaking changes. It's not like something like Cinnamon or KDE or GNOME has been around for a long time. Usually those breaking changes come along with brand new versions of those things, right? Not like point releases. So I think that the Wayland compositors really could be benefited by having something that is pinned to a certain version of their thing and all of the dependencies that go along with it. And they could do that easily by just saying, hey, what is Debian using? That's probably the oldest thing that we're going to have to support is Debian. So let's just take the thing that they support, make that the LTS for the next 2 years. And then, you can move on from everything else, right? That would work. Fortunately, they don't, whether they have the support for that or what, I don't know.
For your own, there have been people that have asked me, hey, Drew, can you create a deb package for Hyperland for Debian stable? And I have not done that, nor probably will I. But at the same time, I think that's a reasonable thing. Again, you're going to have to go back. You're going to have to pin it. You're going to have to package all these things up. You're going to have to run. And then that's it. Don't update it. Don't update it because it's going to break. But otherwise, yeah, it can be done,
Yeah. Okay. Just going once, twice, 3 times. Is there anything else anybody else would like to say on any of the topics that we've covered today? Nope. 3 times. All right. Excellent. All right. So we definitely covered the gamut on some things there, but I think it was a good conversation. So for those of you who watched live, thank you so very much for joining us. We do really, really appreciate it. We do 2 Linux user groups every month. This is the first one, obviously. This is the early one. It's not so much early anymore, but it's the second Thursday of the month, 12:30 to usually around 2:30. We're a little bit, over today, but that's fine. If you want to join us for that one, feel free to do so. We also do a second one. It's the 4th Thursday of the month. That's at 8:15 p.m. Eastern time. And again, we run for about 2 hours. You can, even if you never say anything, you can still join the chat. That's fine. If you would like to talk, we do ask that you have a microphone of some sort, and you try to avoid doing it from like a cafe or something. So, avoid the background noise just a little bit. But other than that, if you don't want to join, you can always join the live stream. We do live stream each one of these, and the VOD is up for anybody who can't join us during the live broadcast of it. So you can check that out as well. So thanks everybody for watching. Excellent LUG. I will see you guys, and we will see you guys next time.